Today, our four-legged friends have been winning in the pandemic. As more and more people have begun working from home and just being there more often, some pets now have their owners with them around the clock. But as we all are now starting to see a light at the end of the pandemic tunnel and more people are thinking about heading back into the workplace, our pooches may start feeling a little extra anxious. And here now to tell us about her steps that she tells people to take now to help their dog transition, we have trainer Milena DiMartini. Milena, thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here, Aubrey.
Yeah, you know, lots of pooches, they've gotten used to their dog moms and dads being home. But what issues will come up as people go back into the office or they start to ramp up those activities outside of the home without their doggies?
Well, realistically, all of these dogs have been truly having the times of their life, having everybody home with them. But there is something very important for us all to consider, and that is as our dogs have acclimated and habituated to us being home, it is not going to necessarily be easy for all of them to transition to having to be home alone again. And oftentimes dogs will start to display signs of separation anxiety, and we really need to explore how to move forward in starting to help them with that.
Yeah, why do dogs get separation anxiety? Is it just they're just really clingy and they just want their humans around?
Oh, it's such a good question. And quite frankly, I could answer this question for about a 3-hour lecture, so we won't get too into the weeds on this. But we know a lot about what does not cause separation anxiety and less about the what actually does, which is very interesting. And one of the things that I want people to really understand is it is not your fault. It is not that you have spoiled your dog rotten and that is what's caused separate. Because quite frankly, don't we all love to spoil our dogs, right? And so it's important that people know that it is not their letting their dog sleep in the bed or feeding them too many treats that has caused this issue.
I think that's a great point to point out so that people know that. So what does separation anxiety look like for dogs? What are we going to see?
So for most dogs, the top 3 items that are recorded are vocalization, so barking, whining, howling, something like that. Destruction.
Oh, man.
And that's a scary one, I know. That could be anything from chewing up the couch cushions all the way to chewing through, drywall.
Wow.
And the last one, also not a pleasant one, is that the animal might eliminate in the home, so peeing and pooping, but only when someone's not home.
Gotcha. So you said there's one thing that pet owners can do right now about that alone time that their dog may be facing.
That's right. Today, right this minute, is the best time for people to utilize the technology that we have, like Zoom, like Skype, like FaceTime, and be able to take a look at what happens when their dog is alone for a brief amount of time. So I don't recommend driving away for 4 hours. I truly recommend something in the neighborhood of maybe 10 or 15 minutes and observing the dog with technology so that we can discern whether there are some signs of anxiety. That is the first step. If there is anxiety, then it's time to start to implement some training.
Right, because you don't want to come home to some chewed up drywall in your house, that's for sure. Any other training tips that pet owners can use that are going to help?
Yes. The thing that I think is the most important is if you are noticing that your dog is experiencing some sort of anxiety or nervousness about alone time, I highly recommend creating small levels of exposure, by which I mean exit the door for maybe 5 seconds and come back in and do some repetition of that. And what starts to happen is the dog gets a bit of a realization like, oh, alone time isn't that bad, it's not very long. And then over time we can improve.
And are there any myths or misconceptions about separation anxiety in dogs?
Oh, there are so many of them, but I want to hit on a couple. One of the biggest myths that we hear is that you can, or I should say that that's been more popular lately, is that you can dress up a mannequin with your clothing and your scent, and you can
I'm
leave
guessing
them
you're
home.
saying that's a no.
And that one's a no. That one's a no. The other really common myths, though, the most common recommendation for treatment is to use a stuffed food toy or to put the dog into a crate. And neither of those are necessarily going to address the anxiety at hand. And so we really want to look into carefully executed, gradual steps of leaving the dog alone.
All right, Melina. Well, that is all we have time for. You want more tips and help for your pooch? You can check out her website, MelinaDeMartini, MelinaDeMartini.com.